Hey guys, all right, so a little Facebook live here. Just got back from an event that I went to this evening. Many of you may know who Father James Martin is. So there was an event featuring Father James Martin where I live in Rochester, New York this evening. I went to it to check it out and see what was going on, and just got home a little bit ago, having some pretzels and salsa with my wife and telling her a little bit about it, and she said, Facebook Live, you got to go on and share some of this right away. So I reluctantly do so. So the Father James Martin event tonight, first he wasn't physically present, thought he was going to physically be there. Something must have come up for him or happened. Instead there was a video screen with him real big in the auditorium. It was at a college, Nazareth College. And I would say there would probably be about 400 or 500 people there. I would say about maybe 75% of them were older people, probably from the Rochester area, and maybe about 25% were students from the college. A lot to share about it. I'm just going to keep it very simple on a few simple points. I think the main point to really understand, for me, it was really easy to see through what Father James Martin was presenting. I can kind of tell what he's doing and kind of understand exactly what's going on, and so it's interesting to be able to kind of watch it and see through it. And so very simply, the main point is that he's really drilling down on this false idea that LGBT or gay or lesbian is an identity. It's an identity to be embraced, he believes. And this is what he's trying to drill down on. In fact, he's saying very clearly what the next step is for him that he's working on, which is for people to name it as an identity in the church. That he said at one point that priests should name it in their homilies. They should. He made an example. This is an easy way that he can do it, is that if he's talking in a homily and he says, well, God loves everybody, regardless if you're black or white or Hispanic, regardless of whether you're a man or a woman or a child, regardless of whether you are straight or LGBT or gay or lesbian. So just kind of slip these words in that signify that this is an identity, that this is who someone's identity is. So that's the problem, and that's what he's pushing. That's not what the church teaches, right? LGBT or gay or lesbian is not an identity, right? What we would say is that there's, people who are experiencing same-sex attraction. It's exactly that. They're experiencing something that is not an identity, but actually it's an inclination towards a sin. It's an inclination towards a very serious sin if acted upon. The inclination in and of itself is not sinful. It is disordered. We're not made for that. And so it's something to be resisted and something to not be acted on. Just like how all of us, it's kind of sort of an extreme that's built out, but we all experience this in the sense of concupiscence. It's an inclination to do the wrong thing. We all have it. We all experience it. It's not our identity, but it's something that we have, right? That inclines us to do the wrong thing, and we are to fight against it. Not to give into it and say, this is my identity and I can do what I want and it's not a sin, not at all. So for him to be saying this is what we need to do is name it as an identity and get that more and more going in the church, that's what his mission is. That's what he's trying to do right now. And it's just wrong. I wish I would have the opportunity to be able to sit down and talk with him about this publicly. I know I likely never would. So probably Facebook Live and sharing some points is the best that I can do. But we all need to be thinking about this so we can see through it when we see it, when it pops up in a parish or a diocese or whatever, to understand where this comes from and how to see through it very quickly. And he uses those terms all the time. He's saying LGBT, he's saying gay and lesbian, referring to people as an identity. So he's naming it all the time as an identity, and that's what he's trying to get to catch on within the church. Start naming it as an identity. And then there's this kind of false choice, right? We either do that, we either name it as an identity, and we're open-minded, and we're progressive, and we're loving, or if we don't name it as an identity, then we're rejecting people. Then we're angry. Then we're homophobic. When that's just a false choice. That's not accurate at all. I love everybody. We're called to love everybody. So no matter what somebody's struggling with, we love them. I love them. And yet, love may actually mean that we don't say, yeah, this is your identity. Yeah, you're gay and it's your identity, and you just, there's no sin involved if you act on it. It's okay. It's your identity. And that's also the implication that he's putting forth there, is that if it's an identity, if this is who you are, then who is anybody to say that it's sinful if you act out on it sexually? If you're in sexual sin, who are you? Who is anybody to say that acting out on that is wrong? He does a very interesting strategic thing based on this, by the way, which I want to, which I think this is probably the most fascinating part of it all. So if you get one thing from it, get this. So this is, because you probably heard all that other stuff before and you probably already understand that, but understand this. He actually makes a really good point, and we need to hear him on this. He said, look, we don't talk to straight people, as he describes them, like this. We wouldn't lead with talking about why aren't you following church teaching on sexuality? And to that I would say, well, it's because it's not, I don't know anybody walking around saying that their sexual sin is their identity. I don't know anybody who comes to me and says, look, I'm a fornicator. That's my identity. If they did, I would very quickly be talking to them about church teaching if they were saying, I'm a fornicating Catholic, as he describes LGBT Catholics. If someone was saying, we got to name it. There are fornicating Catholics. This is who we are in our identity. And, that's who we are. We got to name it. If people were doing that, then yes, I would lead with the church's teaching about sexuality. Absolutely. And this is the point we really need to hear. This is what I want to really drill down on, is this idea that he says, which is, look, if the church is pretty much silent in practice on all these people that are contracepting, all these people that are divorced, all these people that are in these other sexual sins, IVF, he named, if people are doing all of this, then he's basically using that to say, look, they're letting all this go. Our pastors and our bishops are letting all this stuff go. So therefore, what's the problem if we just let this go too? And we just say that LGBT is an identity, gay and lesbian is an identity, and we just don't talk about the sin, because we're not talking about all these other sins that all kinds of people are engaged in. Good point, Father Martin. I actually agree with him, but I disagree with his conclusion. His conclusion is to say, since all these things aren't being spoken of, let's just not speak of this one either. That's really bad, right? We're just going to keep going. How far are we going to go down this line where we're not going to be talking about the sins that are now politically incorrect to talk about, or now these sins that are socially acceptable and the culture doesn't say that they're sins anymore? How far are we going to go? We've gone way too far. We've got to get back. He's pointing it out for us, but we need to go in the other direction, right? Pastors, priests, lay people, we need to start talking about the fact that these other things are sins. We need to talk about contraception, right? We need to ask people, what they believe about that, and make sure that people understand what the church is teaching and that it is true and good and beautiful. Pastors, that you're responsible for this in your parishes. Priests, you're responsible for this. Bishops, you're responsible for this in your dioceses. Fathers, mothers, you're responsible for this in your families, making sure that your children get this as they grow up. What true sexual integrity is, right? We need to be handing this on. So we can't give in to anybody who says, oh, you're so hung up on sex. No, the world is hung up on sex, and the church, sadly, is very silent on it, even though we've got these vibrant, beautiful teachings about human sexuality that are so awesome. Why aren't we sharing them? Why aren't we telling everybody the good news about our sexuality, right? About what it really is. So we have to be formed in it first. Maybe there are some issues there, so we need to make sure that we are getting formed in it in good ways. There's lots of great resources out there to do so, but then we've got to be handing it on. So I think we all know that in practice, the church has been silent about these things in recent decades. And are we going to keep going down that stream and just add more and more that we're going to be silent about and we're just going to let go? Or are we going to love people enough to actually talk about where people really are at and what they're really dealing with, and tell them the truth about human sexuality, and then give them the resources that can really help them to make sense of it for themselves and to have the glorious freedom of the children of God that we are made for. We aren't enslaved to our sinful inclinations. We can be free by God's grace to overcome them, right? This is the good news that Jesus has come to bring for us, right? Grace is real. So I just want to, close with the fact that, we absolutely believe that God loves everybody. We absolutely believe that. So I'm not going to go with this false choice that Father Martin presents that says we either agree that LGBT and gay and lesbian are identities and those sinful inclinations, just part of the identity, and so therefore no big deal, shouldn't really be talking about those things, right? That doesn't mean that we're homophobic if we disagree with that, okay? It doesn't mean that we're rejecting anybody or hating anybody if we say that that's not an identity, that they're actually more, that we're more than that. We're more than our sinful inclinations, right? We truly are. And so we need to love everybody, and part of loving everybody is to be honest about the way reality really is, the way things really work. To be able to say, go and sin no more, for all of us to hear that, right? Wherever we're at, to go and sin no more, to receive the love that God has for us, and then to go and sin no more. Thanks be to God for the sacrament of penance, of reconciliation, of confession, where we can go no matter where we've been. Catholics who are baptized, who have fallen into sin, we can go to confession and lay it all out and receive the mercy and forgiveness of God. If we truly are sorry and want to begin again and don't want to commit that sin anymore, we can fight that good fight of receiving the Lord's grace, going to confession when we fall, and then going to receive the Eucharist in a state of grace. This is Catholicism 101. Why is it not being shared? Why? That's why it's not being lived, because it's not being shared. Pastors, priests, fathers, mothers, anybody who we're responsible for, let's share the good news that we've been given. Let's unleash the Holy Spirit in our hearts by sharing what God has revealed to us, what Jesus died to bring us, and that he's handed on to us for 2,000 years through his Catholic Church that he instituted. We are so blessed. We've been given so much. Let's keep going. And let's be real. When there are people going around, even priests going around, that are being allowed to go around, even if they're being allowed by bishops, even if they're being allowed by the Pope, if they're coming into our diocese and they're spreading error, well, then we should go and seek to understand that error and then go spread the truth. So thanks be to God for the grace to try to do that a little bit. And one thing I will say, at the end of the event tonight, a couple other people were with me. We were able to hand out some flyers to people that were leaving the event to truly love them and invite them to an event that's coming up on November 23rd with this gentleman here. His name is Hudson Biblow, and he's coming from Saskatoon, Canada, I believe, over to Rochester, New York, and he's going to give an event. This is an inspiration from the sense that, from the fact that we knew that Father Martin was coming to town, we wanted to have a response so that we could get the antidote of truth out there for the error that was being spread. So Hudson's going to be coming November 23rd. If you're in the Rochester area, please come. It's 7 p.m. November 23rd at St. Pius X Church in their parish center, 3010 Chili Avenue. When I put some text on this post, I'll put a link to the Facebook page on it. But it's called Something More Beautiful, From LGBTQ to Jesus Christ. Hudson is one who experienced those temptations to go the wrong way, those temptations to make it an identity, to say LGBTQ is an identity, and then he experienced Jesus. And now he knows he's so much more than that false identity. He's got an identity that is much bigger and much greater, and an identity that is going to actually lead him to be the man that he was made to be, not to lead him deeper into sin, not to affirm him into sin and just kind of turn a blind eye and let him go further and further in that direction. That's not real love. So we did pass out these flyers tonight. All are welcome. And we do hope that many of the people that were at the event tonight to see Father Jim Martin will come to this event. They seemed excited about it, and it seemed like many of them will come. So I do hope that they will. I hope everybody will come and hear Hudson when he comes to town November 23rd. But maybe that's a helpful model, right? If Father Martin or anybody else comes to your area and is spreading some error, maybe just work with some good people and get an event going and bring a speaker in who can proclaim the truth that is being obscured in that way, the truth that is the antidote to the error that's being promoted. Lay people, we can do this. We don't have to rely on our bishops and priests for everything. We can't bemoan our bishops and priests like everything's their fault, right? We love our bishops and our priests. We're here to help you guys. And one of the ways is to be real, to treat you like the men you are, not to coddle you, but to say, all right, men, let's go. We can do better than this. We can proclaim the good news better than what we have. And we can invite people to live it. Because we know that people are struggling with some really serious stuff. So let's meet them where we're at and let's share the truth and love with them there, not just ignore it and talk about, fluffy things and humorous things and all of that. Make the most of whatever opportunity you have to love people well and to really help them. So again, God bless you wherever you are. I'm going to go back to maybe having a few more pretzels and some salsa. And I hope you go back to doing whatever good you're doing out there. So God bless you, and have a good night.